over the last years, we've seen more and more extreme weather events, and we know they will become more and more. But now we want to speak with some first responders, with everyday heroes who are there when the climate crisis hits our societies. So please welcome with me two everyday heroes, Victoria Zechmeister and Dom Bay. Welcome. Thank you. Welcome. No, it's perfect here. Yes, yes, you can stay there. Thank you so much. So, Victoria Zechmeister from the Austrian Fire Brigade and Dom Bay, firefighter from California. Thank you so much for joining us and for being here today and share some stories with us and share with us what the climate crisis is making with your work. Victoria, I'd like to start with you. In September, Austria was hit by major flooding. So, can you share some numbers and what were you doing there?
Yes, September 2024 there was an extreme weather event causing floods in Vienna and primarily in Lower Austria. It's starting in the night from the 11th to 12th September. The air temperature dropped from over 30 degrees down to a few degrees Celsius above zero. The following days, heavy rainfalls caused in floodings.
There we can see the images and the pictures, yes.
And the amount of precipitation exceeded 300 liters per square meter, and in some parts of Lower Austria, 400 liters per square meter in 4 days. That's 4 times more than in the whole month of an average September. And on the top of it, there were storms with 90 kilometers per hour. We had to deal with overflowing rivers, dam breaks and landslides, but not in Vienna. There were flooded streets because the sewer system was overloaded and couldn't drain the amount massive of rainwater. We had to, there were uprooted trees and broken branches, flooding because of low-lying areas and in buildings and in garages. And the lower fire department, the fire department from Lower Austria received 18,210 emergency calls during this weather event, with a peak of 938 emergency calls on the 15th of September, only between 6 and 7 o'clock in the morning. And it was the same day when the Vienna Fire Department experienced a record day of interventions. It was the busiest day in its history since its origin in 1686. We had to deal with 1,400 interventions in 24 hours and 3,500 interventions in 3 days. Normally we have approximately 350 interventions in 3 days. And during this event in Eastern Austria, 25,000 firefighters, volunteers and career were on duty only on the 15th of September and more during the whole period. Our work was only to do damage repair, clear the roads from trees and broken branches, pump out water from buildings, and there were only also cars swept away by the massive water of the overflowing Wienfluss. We had to make them safe. Fortunately, there were no people inside.
So there was really a hard day for you and for all of your colleagues. I want to ask you, Dom, because we all saw the shocking images from Los Angeles, from the fire in January. You are in the middle of it. Can you share with us, how was it?
Yeah, so very similar to what Victoria was saying. There are a few situations in our career, I've been a firefighter for 16 years, where you're just along for the ride. And I think Victoria explained it very well. I doubt that they were eating dinner that night or getting much rest with all those calls. The Palisades fire, I thought in 2017 at the Thomas fire in Ventura that I maybe would never see something like that again. And the Palisades fire was an experience. There's some images there. That's on Sunset Boulevard. So really an event that was unstoppable. And we were just doing our best to save what homes we could and make a positive impact for those that were experiencing this incredibly tragic emergency with the fires throughout California.
So there's no doubt that we will see more of these events through climate crisis. How are you and your teams getting ready for that?
Yeah, so here's a stat that I realized this morning. When I went on that fire in 2017, the Thomas Fire was the largest fire in the history of California. I thought that that record would stand for quite some time. Today, that fire is the 9th largest fire in California, meaning that 9 out of the 10 of the largest fires in the history of California have occurred in the past 8 years. So this is a very frequent occurrence. It's something now, there's no longer a wildfire season for us. That used to be when the Santa Ana winds occurred from October to around January. This is now year round. We plan for it, we train for it, and folks are on standby and ready to be deployed throughout the state at any given time for an emergency.
So would you say it's the same in Austria?
It's nearly the same. We increased training how to fight wildfires, vegetarian fires, and work with air operation, how to communicate with helicopter pilots, requirements for successful cooperation compared to what we did the last decades. When there are wildfires, sometimes we get help from helicopters, from the police, from private institution or the federal army, and so we need the trainings with them. We re-evaluate trainings, we do a lot of adjustments, we make continue education, we exchange experiences, not only in Austria with the Austrian Fire Brigade Association, but also across the nations with the European Firefighter Association and international with CTIF. It's an international association for fire and rescue services. We purchase more suitable equipments for flood protection, like high capacity pumps and flood protection, mobile flood protection, and so on. And we work to encourage people to be a part of fire service, whether they become firefighters or support the fire services in another role, particularly in the rural areas. It's very important to recruit voluntary firefighters and that they stay in action. Voluntary firefighters in Austria don't get paid for their work, and they respond to call-outs from their home or the workplace. And fire services and the ability to handle all the operations are only possible with a good, helpful and powerful team. So that's a very, very big thing for us to do.
So with everything that you shared, what would you say to decision makers? What needs to be done?
Yeah, so, you know, Arnold, I think he's in interviews right now, but he always used to say firefighters have one of the hardest jobs in the world. And I actually think we're blessed. Our job is incredibly easy. It's simple. The climate scientists and you entrepreneurs that are looking to study this and make a change have a much more difficult job. For us, we get a call, someone needs help, we show up, we help them. It may be physically tiring, mentally and emotionally, but we show up. I think in today's day and age, everyone wants simple answers to our most complex problems. You all as climate scientists and entrepreneurs, my only thing is, you know, continue to study why this occurs. Don't let the demand from the public for a simple answer water down how complex these issues are, because in California, as you guys know, we have aging power line systems, and aging electrical grid. We have arsonists potentially that take advantage of social media and news hysteria to start fires. And of course, there is a climate component where we are seeing higher amounts of high wind-driven events with low relative humidity, which causes these devastating fires. So to the scientists, keep studying, keep giving us good answers, and hopefully we can find a way to turn things around. and decrease some of these large, devastating fires which are becoming more frequent.
Would you say there's hope?
There's always hope. And again, on brand with Arnold's message of stop whining. As firefighters, we do whine a lot, full transparency. It's part of our birthright is to whine and complain, but we love our job. We show up, and I promise if you call and need our help, we will always be there. So there's always hope as long as there's folks out here that are willing to do the work and help out each other and get through these events.
Oh, we think we need an applause for this. Thank you. So, Victoria, I also want to ask you, what would you say to decision makers?
I would like to appeal to people's sense, to the responsibility and resilience. If someone feels capable, they should maybe, for instance, remove a broken branch on their own, so freeing up the emergency services for more critical situations. And ideally, people almost educate more for self-protection, because the better prepared the public is in situations like floodings or blackouts, the safer they can act. And that, in turn, eases the burden on emergency services in major disasters.
So also for you the question, is there hope?
There is hope.
Always.
Always, yeah. With all the people and all the team. So, like Nico Rosbeck said, there's a team with 1,500 people. In Austria, we have a team with 355 firefighters. So, we all together will check it, and if you need help, we will come and help you to make this safe.
Both of you. Thank you so much, Dom Bay and Victoria Zechmeister. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
My God, is that music majestic or what? I'm very excited for our next panel. We have three people who, as Arnold would say, are kicking ass and helping terminate pollution. And they're from three very interesting groups. With me on stage, we have Sasa Braun from Interpol. Joining us on the screen, we have Fiona Donovan from the World Central Kitchen. She's coming to us from Maine. And we have Carol Devine with Médecins Sans Frontières. Forgive my French there, Carol. But that is also known as Doctors Without Borders, coming to us from Toronto. So first of all, thank you all three for being here. So Sasa, I want to start with you. And by the way, this guy is one of the most fascinating people I've ever met. He is the Senior Criminal Intelligence Officer on Pollution at Interpol. He is 007 for pollution. I think they're going to make a movie, and Pedro Pascal is going to play him. So Sasa, oh, wait a second. Come on. You knew he had the glasses. Oh, my God. Seriously, I want your aura, brother. I know the word aura. That's what's impressive. So here's what I want to ask you. At Interpol, how are pollution and criminal activities connected?
I need the microphone. Yeah, no problem. Let me start very briefly from the beginning. So environmental crime, we need to understand, is the third biggest criminal sector in the world. It comes right after counterfeit products and drugs. So Interpol perceives environmental crime in 5 different crime areas. So we are dividing into forestry crime, fisheries crime, illegal mining crime, pollution crime, and wildlife crime. And I can guarantee you it's full of organized crime, it's full of terrorism even. We grill our sausages on charcoal that is produced by the Al-Shabaab or Boko Haram, and we don't know about it. We have organized crime groups here, corporate crime, we have private brokers, so many criminal stakeholders that we cannot believe. To give you one example, I've been myself in Nigeria on the ground in an operation called AWS, targeting pollution, crime, illegal mining, and also deforestation. What I've seen was terrible. I was a couple of weeks on the ground, and you see really women and children in totally polluted areas, mercury, cyanides. You see illicit trafficking and a supply of tramadol, heavy painkillers. By once you get polluted, your nervous system goes down, you have heavy pain. So they pump into people that are, by the way, forced labor. We're talking about modern slavery in the field. It's not terminated in 1865. It's still available, unfortunately. So people working for $1, $2 per day, dying, being contaminated with mercury, and then pumped with heavy painkillers, it's a tragedy.
Well, that is a very sobering account. Fiona, we're going to turn to you. Now, you're the VP of Response Administration at the World Central Kitchen. So just explain to us, what is World Central Kitchen, and explain your role there, Fiona.
Yes, absolutely. And it's so great to be with you all today. My name is Fiona Donovan. I'm the VP of Response Administration at World Central Kitchen, and I oversee our relief teams and operations globally. So to share a little bit about WCK, we are a nonprofit organization that is first to the front lines to provide meals in response to humanitarian, climate, and community crises. What we do is actually very simple. We feed people. But how we feed people is what makes our mission unique. And there are a few key elements that really define what we call the WCK way and how we respond to support communities in need. So first of all, we move urgently and are often some of the first people that show up when a disaster strikes, particularly in hard-to-reach places where other groups can't or won't go. And part of what defines us is that we don't wait until someone tells us that there is a need for meal support. We see a crisis and we quickly deduce that local capacity will become overwhelmed and respond to start serving food as quickly as possible. Secondly, our teams are really powered by local communities who lead our response efforts. We tap into communities as our superpower, and they guide us in the right direction as soon as we get on the ground. We know that locally impacted families know their neighbors, they know the most vulnerable populations, or the ways that perhaps previous disasters have hit the same areas and what the highest needs were. So we lean on these leaders and we empower them to be the architects of their own response and let them tell us where to go and who needs help. And then third, our meals are always culturally appropriate. We work closely with local chefs and culinary leaders to make sure that we're preparing and serving food that is aligned with the community needs so that we're not only offering sustenance and calories, but also comfort, care, and familiarity when everything else is destabilized. It's also really important to us that our response model is highly adaptable, and we make sure to respond in a way that meets the needs where they are. So no two responses for WCK are the same. For example, after the California wildfires this past January, we rapidly mobilized food trucks to serve meals to displaced families because we knew that the fire lines kept on shifting and that we needed to have a very flexible mobile feeding plan to fit the context. Whereas in Myanmar this year, after a 7.7 magnitude earthquake, caused widespread damage across the region, we distributed 400,000 pounds of bulk food product to community kitchens so that families could cook for themselves. So we're always adapting and making sure that our response model really fits the needs where they are.
Well, that was interesting when you talked about that point about collaborating with the locals. I think that's a message certainly that we heard Governor Schwarzenegger talking about, working locally. So Carol, Doctors Without Borders, we often think of this group in moments of crisis, but you also serve long-term care as well. So I'm curious, what have you seen in terms of the impact of climate change that it's had on the operations of Doctors Without Borders?
Thank you. Thank you for having me too. And just to contextualize it, Doctors Without Borders started in 1970, 1971 by doctors and probably less known by journalists. And today, our human resources, our colleagues who are working on the climate crisis and many other interrelated health crises, there's 66,000 colleagues in Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, in over 70 countries. So the majority of our colleagues are living in the countries they work in. So 90% of our staff are locally hired. So I think what Fiona said and what you said, Arnold said about communities, they are really the climate heroes. But just to say, we recently did research. We wanted to ask colleagues in these countries where they're most impacted, what are you seeing? What are you experiencing? And then on the flip side, how are we responding? But on impacts, Matt, what we heard from a colleague in Haiti are ferocious impacts, profound impacts. So 3 quick examples. In Burundi, a colleague said that there was a flood and people's homes got washed away. And one of the worst part were the bodies that got washed away. So families can't even grieve lost ones. So alongside that in Burundi, of course, with warming temperatures. So you have these, exacerbating effects on health. In Honduras, we had colleagues on top of roofs because of the flooding, because of the cyclone. You have people on the move, people forcibly displaced. So you have these health impacts, but humanitarian impacts, and then livelihoods. And then in Bangladesh, where I worked for a short time, I mean, the constant threat of cyclone. Are there enough cyclone shelters? But the salinity intrusion, the sea level rise, and who's most impacted? The people who have done the least to contribute to these crises.
Right. Heartbreaking. Sasa, one of the things you were talking about, you talked about all the different ranges of crimes, carbon trading crimes, and we've talked about carbon neutrality. So explain, how does this happen and how do you infiltrate this? How do you crack the crime?
Well, let me just jump back to another thing that I just want to mention, put the dots here together, because what Carol was saying, houses blown away, and also previously we were talking about cement, right?
Yeah.
And for construction industry.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, illegal sand mining, almost nobody knows about it, is a huge disaster for the environment. The sand, you cannot take it from the Sahara, you take it from the rivers, from the coastal areas, because it's sharp, and you need that for the cement. What we don't know is like 80% of the world trade been unknown of origin, so they steal sand globally, and I've seen myself in Gambia what's happening. They steal the sand, export it to Asian countries, it goes into construction, nobody knows where it goes from, goes into the Middle East, etc. And houses blown away from people, rivers change the direction, rivers totally dry out, huge loss of biodiversity, just for you to know. And now let me come back to your question.
Yeah. No, that's a really feel-good story now. Don't trust any buildings you're in. That sand could have been stolen in the cement.
Exactly, that's the thing. Carbon trade, as mentioned in Carbon Crooks in the documentary, if you want a fast and untraceable crime to commit, carbon is the perfect candidate for you, and that's a true story. Originally, it is a good idea, carbon trade emissions cap and trade system, to have it like controlled, to buy the certificates, have less exhaust, less emissions. On the other side, also to invest in climate protection project, reforestation and stuff like that. A good idea initially, but a lot of fraud. We saw a lot of organized crime jumping here into. We saw a lot of tax evasion. We saw a lot of fraudulent projects that don't exist, where certificates are issued based on fake reforestation projects, where the market was flooded with certificates and where there was no incentives anymore for companies. They wouldn't exhaust less, they would just buy certificates. So to make a long story short, it's an immature market still, because lacking a lot of regulations, and it's more a business model than climate protection. And how we address it, intelligence exchange between law enforcement, nationally, internationally. We catch up with multi-agency task forces to get a holistic approach. We try to convince countries to have a stronger control and stronger traceability of certificates, stuff like this. But it's a big money-making issue. To be frankly speaking, it's a bad story. Yeah.
Wow. I will sleep better knowing the 007 of pollution is on it, though. So, Fiona, you talked about the World Central Kitchen being right there as natural disasters happen. Have you had a chance to be a part of a first responders team?
Yes, I have. I've been with WCK for almost 6 years and have been on the ground leading our responses dozens of times. One of the most significant recent responses was Hurricane Helene last fall, we began our response to the devastation caused by the hurricane in North Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, and Florida. And the storm caused unprecedented impacts across the 4 states. We served 1.7 million meals and distributed 2.2 million gallons of water throughout that response, and really saw that climate-related disasters are getting more unpredictable and more severe. And in North Carolina, our response model included many different facets. We partnered with local restaurants to serve meals whose businesses were really suffering due to loss of power, water, sanitation, and for months later, the lack of tourism as well. And we set up a massive field kitchen in Asheville, North Carolina, that at its height was cooking 30,000 meals a day. We also worked with local NGOs and churches to set up localized feeding hubs and community kitchens so that local community members who already knew who and how to serve meals had the infrastructure and the financial support needed to accelerate their efforts. And we were actually in North Carolina supporting the community through April of this year, as many residents in remote areas still lacked access to power, water, and food. So that's a big part of how WCK operates. We stay for as long as there is a need that we're able to fill, and we don't have any firm deadline on how long we're on the ground. Another example of one of the largest and most complex natural disasters I led at WCK was the Turkey and Syria earthquake in 2023, when we served over 20 million meals across the region. So we set up 14 kitchens. We were in Turkey, we were in Syria, navigating in a conflict zone as well. And, really for us, part of being on the ground is listening to the community and listening to the people and making sure that they have a voice in the response.
Well, you all have been very generous with your time. We have time for one final question. Carol, I will submit it to you. We're here. This is so much about having leaders here, politicians, influencers. So what would you and Doctors Without Borders request from policymakers to help with responses to these natural disasters?
Thank you. I think it's incredibly important. We can respond to, malaria and extreme weather events, but we need the big picture. Failure to mitigate, failure to adapt to the climate crisis and environmental degradation will be very poor health outcomes. On the flip side are the health co-benefits of climate action. We have to have fossil fuel non-proliferation, as Sasha was saying. And then I'm going to say, underlying these kind of 5 things I'm going to say are humanity, solidarity, collaboration, extremely important. Communities, I've heard it echoed just in this short portion I've been involved with. Communities must be involved. They know their needs. They have wisdom. I was working with Inuit elders who know the sea ice, who know what's happening, who know how to hunt sustainably. We have to listen to the science. I heard that earlier too. It's unequivocal. We cannot backtrack. Climate change is a health issue. We must integrate health as a climate issue. It's ridiculous not to. It's also a mental health issue, as we know. Funding, new and additional funding, not recycling funding, and human rights at the base. Who is most responsible and who is most affected? So back to our basic humanity, our basic solidarity, and based on need, listen to the people and follow them. Thank you.
Amen. That was nice. Well said there, Carol Devine. Thank you for being here. Thank you to Doctors Without Borders. Fiona Donovan, thank you to you and World Central Kitchen. And of course, Sasa Braun of Interpol. Thank you all. You were 3 spectacular speakers. What a morning it's been.